The number of unruly passenger incidents on planes in the U.S. is actually down significantly. And new data shows that we have the FAA's zero tolerance policy and the lifting of the federal mask mandate to thank. Errol Barnett is in Dallas with more on this. Errol, good morning.
Great to see you, Vlad and Anne-Marie. So you've got it right, Anne-Marie. The unruly passenger rate has dropped to a number we haven't seen since before there was a federal mask mandate. It's now fewer than 2 unruly incidents per 10,000. That's significant because that's the measurement since a Florida judge struck down the rule. But even in April, we were seeing rates of just above 4 incidents per 10,000. The FAA, though, will tell you it deserves credit for some of this. It is pointing to its zero tolerance policy, which was put into effect at a time when the unruly rate was above 12 incidents per 10,000 passengers flown around the country. And that zero tolerance policy includes things like really hefty fines. In fact, last month, they levied a fine of more than $80,000 toward one woman, a passenger who allegedly just would not follow flight crew instructions. And that zero tolerance policy, by the way, the FAA says, is here to stay. And so despite there no longer being a federal mask rule, that mandate really was responsible for some 70% of all of these unruly incidents. The FAA says that zero tolerance policy will stay. So even though it may not be a rule, you really have to be careful when you travel this summer because there are hefty guidelines in place.
So, I mean, it feels as if because summer is coming, the weather's getting warmer, people are excited. I mean, there had been some travel taking place over the course of the last year or so, but it does feel like this summer, the summer of 2022, is when people are essentially going to try to go back.
They're going to let loose
and enjoy their lives.
Pent-up vacation stress.
Exactly. I like that term, pent-up vacation stress. So could we see that trend change, Errol?
Well, you're both exactly right? We've never seen a summer like we're about to enter into because it's coming out of a number of years that we hadn't experienced before. That pent-up energy to get out and travel is there. In fact, the expectation is that this summer we could see record-setting levels of passenger numbers. The TSA administrator, David McCuskey, is here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area yesterday holding a media roundtable. And now, because we're going to see increased travel and who knows what effect that will have on passengers getting along with each other, he says it's really up to each of us to respect each other as we head about the country. Listen to this.
If you have a passenger that you're traveling with and that passenger asks you to wear a mask, that you carefully consider that. I mean, that might mean that the passenger has a medical condition potentially or a family situation where they want to have additional protection as they travel. And for those passengers, how you ask is also very important.
So based on that, you could say that the official Biden administration policy when it comes to travel masks is ask nicely.
Right. Just mind your manners.
Right.
Be considerate. Too bad you can't put that in like a law or anything like that.
Could have done that before they decided to get rid of the mask mandate.
But Vlad, this is what I was thinking. You know, we were doing these stories before the mask mandates. Mm-hmm. Remember, we were talking all about these unruly passengers, and Vlad and I were just talking about the most recent case where this guy walked out to the wing of a plane
because he wouldn't be
served
alcohol.
You remember that? And it was because he couldn't be served alcohol. It had nothing to do with the mask. So it makes me wonder, you know, how much are we going to see these events sort of ticking down when people were kind of behaving pretty badly before?
Right.
It's a really good point. Alcohol played a major role in all of these unruly incidents. And in fact, we've seen folks in the aviation industry, the Flight Attendants Union and others say, can we please try to limit or put the responsibility on airports to not serve alcohol so freely? I don't know how many times you've traveled, but I've certainly been about the country in the morning and seen plenty of folks at the bar. Look, what we do know, the expectation this summer is that we may see travel numbers that exceed 3 million passengers per day. Our current record is 2.8 million. And I'm here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area spending time with some of the major airlines here, American Airlines and Southwest Airlines, both of which are staffing up aggressively in preparation for a busy summer and training their staff on de-escalation. Both will see those stories airing on CBS News very soon. But the industry is trying to get as ready and as prepared as possible for what will be a very busy travel season. And let's not forget, mass cancellations are not outside of the equation. So it's something we'll be watching very closely.
Well, yeah. So, Errol, before we let you go, I mean, you say that you're speaking to some of the airline representatives. It strikes me that the alcohol being served at airports is because there are these mass cancellations or mass delays.
So now you're there waiting for 4 hours instead of for 1 hour.
And I'm not excusing the unruly behavior. I think it's horrific. I have a lot of friends who are flight attendants and who are pilots in the industry, none of those individuals who work at those airlines should have to deal with somebody who's being rude or unruly on a plane. On the other hand, I do note that the airline industry has to wake up to the fact that over the course of the last 10 years, cancellations have gotten worse.
Yeah.
Flight delays have gotten worse. Passengers are being forced to pay for everything. You can barely get a tiny little bag of pretzels that have 3 little broken pretzels in them on a 4-hour flight, right? You can't even, you ask for water, it takes, the point is that the airlines have cut these costs, and I get it, it makes air travel cheaper. There's a yin and yang to everything.
But the experience is more stressful.
The experience
and less
is
reliable.
Less reliable, exactly. What are the airlines saying to you about that?
You'll see that in these upcoming reports. You make a fantastic point, because think about it historically. Do you guys remember when seats were wider? When you had more leg room?
Gosh.
When folks in aircraft actually enjoyed traveling? That's not what we have these days.
It used to be a treat.
Unless, as you say, though, you're willing to pay for it. And so the airline industry in general, by now, has gotten away with charging more for offering less. And we were also looking at all these inflation numbers, too. Certainly that plays a role in how a passenger feels by the time they get to the airport. It has to be a connecting flight anyway. They're spending an hour through the security check-in, and maybe, as you say, flights get delayed and canceled. It is frustrating. So there is responsibility on both sides here. You'll see in our reporting coming up soon how the airlines are preparing. But traveling in 2022 is like nothing we've seen before, and we'll see this summer how things unfold and develop.
I feel like we're going to be talking to Errol a lot this
summer. I hope so, because there's a lot to talk about. This is something that I think that, this is such an interesting subject, Errol, and I'm glad you're on it, because it affects everybody.
It really does.
And it's really practical.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thanks to you both.